You know, in the world of web development, most tools have a pretty short shelf life, right? They come and go. But what if a framework could not only survive a complete technological revolution, but actually come out stronger on the other side? Well, that's the story we're diving into today, the story of jQWidgets and how it did exactly that.
So have you ever wondered how developers manage to build those beautiful, super complex dashboards and websites without, well, starting completely from scratch? If you're a developer or you manage a tech team, you know the pain. You need to build this powerful, data-heavy app, but coding every single chart, every grid, every calendar from the ground up, man, that would take forever. So what's the secret?
For a lot of teams, the answer is a tool just like this, jQWidgets. Think of it as a complete toolkit, packed with pre-built components that let developers assemble these really complex UIs and do it fast. But to really get why this was such a big deal, we've got to go back, way back to the beginning.
All right, so let's jump in our time machine and head back to the early 2010s. This was a time when, believe it or not, one single library pretty much rules the entire web. Back then, jQuery was king. Seriously, it made building interactive websites so incredibly simple, and by 2011, you'd be hard-pressed to find a website that wasn't using it. And this was the perfect storm for jQWidgets to launch. It was built right on top of that solid jQuery foundation, and its whole purpose was to give developers the powerful, professional building blocks they were just starving for.
Now, to be fair, jQuery had its own set of freak components, known as jQuery UI, but jQWidgets came to the table with a totally different pitch. It was a professionally supported commercial alternative, and it came with a library that was way deeper, way more feature-rich. And for those serious big-time enterprise projects, developers were absolutely willing to pay for that extra reliability and power.
So what were they actually getting for their money? Let's pop the hood and take a look inside the toolkit that made jQWidgets so popular back in the day.
Get this, over 60 professionally designed widgets. That is a massive, massive head start for any dev team. We're not just talking about simple buttons and inputs. We're talking about incredibly complex controls for enterprise-level applications, all in one neat package.
And just look at some of these heavy hitters. You had the JQX grid, which could handle just enormous amounts of data. You had beautiful interactive charts, a full-blown scheduler that can honestly go toe-to-toe with Google Calendar, and even a docking layout for building crazy complex interfaces like what you'd see in a software editor. These weren't just little add-ons, you know? They were the core of entire applications.
And yeah, developers definitely noticed. This quote here from Lucas Oshoda, a software developer, I think it just perfectly captures the vibe at the time. He says, "I was waiting for professional widgets based on jQuery for years. This is great." And that really says it all, right? There was this real hunger for high-quality professional tools built on that familiar jQuery foundation.
And that hunger quickly turned into a real-world adoption. We're not just talking about individual developers tinkering on side projects. This framework was being trusted by major organizations, universities like Iowa and Maryland, government portals in the US and France. This really cemented its reputation as a serious, super reliable tool.
Okay, so things are going great. But what's really fascinating about this whole story is what happens next. Because as we all know, the web, well, it never ever stands still.
The very ground that jQWidgets was built on, jQuery, was about to get shaken to its core. A whole new wave of technologies was coming, and for this tool to survive, a massive pivot wasn't just a good idea, it was absolutely necessary.
So, starting around the mid-2010s, the ground really started to shift. You had these new frameworks exploding onto the scene, React, Vue, Angular, and they brought a whole new way of building websites. It was all about these self-contained components. And the key thing here? This new model didn't need jQuery at all. So you can imagine, for a tool built entirely on jQuery, this was a code-red existential threat. So what did they do? In 2018, the team made an incredibly bold move. They launched a completely new successor.
They called it Smart HTML Elements. And it wasn't just an update, it was a total reinvention. This time it was built using native web components, a standard that's baked right into the web browser itself. And that meant, and this is the crucial part, it had zero dependencies. No jQuery, no React, nothing. It could just work all on its own. This was a massive bet on a future where the web was more open and standardized.
And you know what? That dependency-free approach was a masterstroke. It was the game changer. Why? Because it meant they could offer native support for all the modern technologies. It didn't matter if your team was using Angular, or React, or Vue, or even something like Microsoft's Blazor. The components just worked right out of the box. And that flexibility? That was the key to their survival and why they're still so relevant today.
Okay, so that brings us to right now. Why are enterprise teams at huge companies, we're talking giants like Microsoft, Intel, and Boeing, still choosing this framework? In such a crowded market, what's the big draw?
Well, it really boils down to three core things. First, performance. It's just optimized for speed and scale, especially for those huge, enterprise-level applications. Second, compatibility. It is rock solid. It just works across all modern browsers and devices. No headaches. And third, and this is a big one, productivity. It lets teams ship better products faster because they have a consistent, accessible, and reliable set of tools.
And honestly, this quote from Mark Black over at National Instruments just nails it. He talks about needing a technology stack with the flexibility to fit into multiple different applications frameworks, while also being sustainable in the long term by using the latest web standards. That's it. That's exactly what this evolution delivered. It's future-proof.
So when you look back, the story of jQWidgets is really a masterclass in adaptation. And it leaves us with a pretty powerful question to chew on, right? In a world of disposable tech, where things change in the blink of an eye, what does it take for a tool to actually endure? Maybe the secret isn't just building something great once. Maybe it's having the courage to completely rebuild it for whatever comes next. Pretty interesting stuff to think about. Thanks for joining me on this one.